As I was finishing up this sermon earlier in the week, I almost sent out the word that we're going to have church on Wednesday because I was so excited to deliver this sermon. I felt like I couldn't wait until Sunday, and I've been thinking about it all week long. So if I get a little excited, it's because I'm just like the horse getting ready to get into the race here. I'm really excited about this passage. It deals with one of my favorite stories from the Bible, and even as I've prepared to preach about it, it's even become more favorite. So we're in the Old Testament, in Genesis, as I mentioned earlier, and we are talking about the family of Isaac. Isaac was the son of Abraham. Isaac was the next in line of God's great family as he is going to unfold a plan to bring salvation to the world. And in the life of Abraham, God taught him many things that showed that this was going to take place. In the life of Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, we're going to see that as well. Kind of that their lives foreshadow Christ coming and what he is for us. And so we're going to dig into here. Now, we're going to cover about 8 chapters of the Bible today, so we're not going to read them all through, but if you want to go home and read Genesis 25 to 33, that's kind of where we're taking this part of the story here. But Isaac, he was married to a woman named Rebekah. I'll kind of retell the story here, give us the backdrop. And she became pregnant with twins. And even in the womb, the Bible tells us that these 2 little boys that were in her womb are struggling and wrestling all the time. And those of you who've been pregnant, you know what it's like to have a baby move around. And those that had twins know that that's even a bigger deal. But these were very restless babies, and she was really worried about it. But God told her, well, the reason this is going on, it's not because physically something's wrong, it's because they are in competition with each other already, and they're going to be in competition with each other their whole life. And what's going to end up is that the older is going to serve the younger, and the younger is going to serve the older. And that was the message that she got from the Lord about that. Now, Esau was a rugged guy. If you want to go down to the pictures here, skipping over the words here, but Esau was the rugged guy, liked to go out hunting. He was the man's man. Jacob, he was a mama's boy. He was at home, fixing the food, taking care of things around the house. And each parent had their favorite child. Isaac was very fond of Esau. Rebekah was very fond of Jacob. And it created some divisions in the family, the whole favorite child sort of thing. And in that culture, the firstborn child was the one who inherits the family name, the prestige, the being able to, it's not that the other children didn't get anything, but the oldest son was able to carry on the family inheritance. And of course he would share with the siblings and everything, but the direct line went through the oldest child. And so this was called a birthright, the right of birth to be able to carry on the family inheritance and to stay in charge of everything in the family, to be the patriarch of the family. Now, one fine day when these 2 young men were grown up, Esau had been out hunting, and he came back just hungry as could be, and Jacob had a bowl of stew, a pot of stew all ready, and Esau said, "Please give me something to eat." And Jacob, being the little conniver that he was, said, "I'm going to take advantage of this situation." And he's going to say, "Well, what are you going to give me for it?" Well, Esau was hungry, and when a man is hungry, he's not very rational sometimes. And in the midst of this competition thing going on, Jacob said, "Give me your birthright, and I'll give you this bowl of soup." Well, Esau said, "Sure, whatever, I'm hungry." And so they made a verbal contract that the birthright would go to the younger son. Esau gave that away as a rash decision. Now, of course, Jacob and his mother Rebekah, they were like, "Yes, okay, this is going to be the first step in fulfilling our plan so that Jacob could win this birthright." And sometime later, when Isaac was blind and they thought he was going to die, although he lived another 30 years, so I don't know if he was sickly the whole time or if he was just an age when death could happen, so he decided to take care of it. He said, "I'm going to call Esau to me, and I'm going to give the ceremony to pass on the birthright to him." And so he said, "Esau, to prepare for this ceremony, go out, Hunt me something down, fix your best meal out of it, and come serve it to me. And as we eat that meal together, I will give you the blessing of passing on the birthright. So Esau goes out into the wilderness to go get his prey. And meanwhile, Jacob and Rebekah are praying in a different way on Isaac. And they come up with the plan that they're going to use this time to get that blessing. Now, Isaac was blind. He wasn't able to see. So Jacob got all fixed up in Esau's clothes, got himself all rough and rugged, and went in there with a meal that he and his mother had prepared, and went in and served it to Isaac, pretending to be Esau. Now, a couple times along the way in this whole ceremony, Isaac's saying, "Is that really you, Esau?" I mean, he could kind of tell something was up. And Jacob flat out several times said, "No, I am Esau." He just lied to his father, deceiving him right before his very blind eyes. So Jacob ended up receiving the blessing from his father. In the meantime, then, Esau comes back, prepares his meal, comes into his father, and he's ready for the ceremony of getting the blessing. And he finds out, and Isaac finds out, that it's already been done. And Jacob, the conniver, the manipulator, the deceiver, has actually fulfilled that pact of taking that birthright from his brother. Well, Isaac was upset that he had been deceived. Esau, you could imagine, he was really upset. I mean, he had made a rash decision quite a while back. Whether he remembered that or how that played into the story, we're not really sure, but Esau was angry. You could imagine. You know, he'd been deceived and manipulated, and he made plans that he was going to kill his brother Jacob as soon as his father was dead. Well, Rebekah and Jacob knew about this and decided, well, it's probably going to be better if Jacob leaves. He's going to be safer here. And so Jacob leaves to go off to visit his relatives that lived in a faraway land, and the family was torn up in this way. You know, if you think you have dysfunction in your family, this family was pretty dysfunctional in this story as well. You have parents choosing favorites. You've got this unhealthy competition going on, jealousy, manipulation, dishonesty, lying, stealing, anger, accompanying with plans for murder. I mean, it doesn't get much more dramatic than this. The chaos affected everything. You can imagine the relationship between Isaac and Rebekah was probably strained because of this whole thing. I mean, imagine if your spouse planned this way to deceive you. I mean, that would really hurt and build distrust there. You know, the relationship between Isaac and Jacob was strained, between Esau and his mother was strained, between Esau and Jacob himself. I mean, this family was really split apart through the unhealthy drama that took place here. We don't get to choose the family we're born into. Maybe your family had more drama to it than what you wish was a part of the story. It happens. Next week we're going to talk about this a lot more when we talk about Jacob and his kids. You know, the dysfunction and how it affects us, and how even these things that hurt us and confuse us, because we're born into a world of sinners, and sin just gets passed on, and even good parents, you know, do things and act certain ways and say things at times that might hurt our kids, you know, and we try, don't we? We try, okay? And hopefully there's enough love and grace and forgiveness to cover those things up. We'll get into that next week. But we're born into a world that's broken, and into families that has brokenness in it as well. Even when we create our new families, we get that opportunity to do that. Sometimes it doesn't turn out as smooth and happy as we think it's going to be on that wedding day. There's rough patches along the way. We don't always have a choice over how other people act or what they do or say. You know, we have control over ourselves, but sometimes we don't even have control over what we act and what we do and say. We lose control, and we make things worse as well. Here's a family that's pretty messed up. In fact, Esau went and found himself 2 wives that we read in Genesis 26:35. It says that these 2 daughter-in-laws made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Obviously, that made it worse as he went out and found these wives that didn't fit in with the family as well. We're not sure what they did or what was going on, but it caused a lot of friction in their family. And here, I mean, you can imagine Rebekah. She was so close to her son Jacob, and now he's in a faraway land. They couldn't text each other or send emails. I mean, he was gone for years without any contact. You know, wondering how he's doing, what's going on. I mean, it was a very difficult family situation. You can imagine Esau had a pretty inferiority complex. You know, he lost his birthright. Now his parents are mad at him because he's married these wives that they don't approve of. You know, he's kind of an outcast himself. He's been rejected. He's feeling lonely. He's feeling like a failure. Things are pretty tough. Meanwhile, years have passed. Probably about 15 or 20 years pass, and we're going to get into that story next week. But Jacob, where he's at, has started a family. It's very dysfunctional. We'll get into that next week. But suffices to say, there comes a time when he says, I'm ready to go back home. And so he takes his family, he takes his flocks, he starts heading for home. As he's heading for home, news gets out somehow that he's coming, and Esau comes out to meet him in the middle of the wilderness. It's not just Esau coming to meet him, but he's got an army of 400 soldiers with him. Okay, so obviously Esau has created quite a bit of power for himself in the meantime. He has an army of 400 people with him, and they're going out to meet Jacob. And Jacob gets wind of this. And it's almost a comical story because Jacob is so afraid of his brother and meeting his brother Esau that he puts all his servants up ahead, that he puts his wives and kids up ahead, and he's in the very back, hoping that along the way, maybe either somebody else will take the hit instead of him, or maybe Esau will lose his anger by seeing all the things and the people that are in part of Jacob's life. It's almost comical but tragic as well because he's such a coward. But when Jacob is met by Esau, he gets a greeting, he gets a response that he did not expect at all. In Genesis 33:4, we read that Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. What had happened wasn't brought up. There was no blaming. There was no revenge. There was no anger. There was no murder. None of this happened. Esau met him with a clean, forgiving heart. When I get to heaven, Esau's one of the probably top 5 people I want to meet and talk to. What happened? What took him from being a raging, angry, planning a murder of his brother man who had been deceived, lost everything that was his right to have, to being able to receive him like this? I mean, I want to hear that story. We don't have Esau's point of view much here in the Bible. We kind of have it from Jacob's point of view. Somewhere along the way, Esau experienced a heart change. Something happened in his heart that caused him to be able to greet Jacob with his acceptance and forgiveness. And even though Esau didn't receive the blessing from his father, obviously he received a blessing from God. God, somewhere along the way, touched his heart and allowed him to be able to be full of love and forgiveness and compassion and kindness towards his brother. God didn't leave Esau out of the picture. God still blessed Esau. First of all, by giving him a new heart, by giving him a heart that was able to repent of the anger and the murderous plot that he had in it that was there. God blessed him, obviously, even though he had a family that was still messed up and caused problems. God was taking care of him. Maybe he didn't get the blessing that he wanted, but he got a different blessing from God. a different blessing. When things aren't going our way and we don't get the blessing that we're counting on because somebody else has messed it up, they deceived us, they manipulated us, they cheated us out of that right that we have, do we see the other blessings that God has in store for us? Do we see the blessings, first of all, of a changed heart, a heart that can let go of what was done, what was wronged to us? In fact, and this is, I think, one of the most beautiful verses in the whole Bible, and that's why I'm excited about this. In Genesis 33:10, when Jacob saw Esau, he said, "I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, for you have accepted me." When Jacob saw Esau, it was like meeting God, because that forgiveness and the love and acceptance was there. It could only come from God. It wasn't a human, natural thing that had taken place in Esau's life. It was supernatural. The presence of God was there in Esau, and Jacob felt that. And when we extend love, forgiveness, and acceptance to those that have hurt us, that have wronged us, that have stolen the blessing that we deserved, when we offer that forgiveness out to them, we are the face of God to those people. That's how they could see God in us and through us. And that's not easy. It's hard. I mean, to try to be the face of God, I mean, that's a pretty high level to try to reach. But by loving, accepting, by giving the respect, even though we've been wronged, to be able to forgive and wish the best, that's being God to other people. And if we want to live out the gospel in our lives, and we pray it when we pray the Lord's Prayer, that we want to be forgiven as we forgive others. How do we forgive others? Do we forgive others in the way that God's forgiven us? Or do we get really stingy and mean and nasty about it? God's not that way with us, and He teaches us through His forgiveness how to forgive others. Not to say there's not boundaries you put up. You don't want to walk into a situation where you're going to get just beat up again. We don't walk into those things, but to be able to have a change of heart so that we can offer that and be that face of God to those around us. I'm just thinking for Jacob, who was so scared all these years of what was waiting him when he came home. You know, that trip home when he was even so scared that he put his wife and kids out in front of him to protect him. You know, when he saw Esau and met the face of God, what a wonderful moment that was for him. When people encounter us, do they see the face of God? Do they see people that are loving and forgiving, that are reflecting God in our lives? Such a great story about that for us here. The Apostle Paul tells us in the New Testament some things about that. He says, love one another with brotherly affection and outdo one another in showing honor. We should be trying to even be more giving honor to the people around us than what we were before, what other people are. Not that we're in a competition, but it's a healthy thing. Let's be so honorable to other people around us that we can just keep getting better and better at it and keep outdoing ourselves. Philippians 2:3, do nothing from rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let's forget the me first thing. Let's put others first. Let's put them first. We're not going to hurt ourselves by putting other people first. We're told to do that. Ephesians 5:1-2, be imitators of God. Here we go. Let's be imitators of God. Let's reflect Him as beloved children and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave Himself up for us, a fragrant offering and a sacrifice to God. When we're loving others, when we're walking in love, that's our offering to God. It's not just the money we put in the plates. The greatest offering is how we walk in love towards other people around us, and that's the sacrifice. And it is a sacrifice to love others, right? We don't always get something back in return. We shouldn't expect that, but we should give freely. In Ephesians 5:21, to submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. As He submitted Himself to the will of the Father and submitted Himself for us, He gives us a big shoes to walk in, to fill, right? To be able to do that as well. Esau may not have gotten the birthright, but he got the blessing of God in his life. He knew the riches of God that was in his heart, And if we're sitting around waiting for that blessing to come, let's stop waiting for it. Let's be the blessing. The blessing is there. Let's be the blessing to those around us. Maybe you have some relationships that you're thinking of today that need mending. Maybe there's been some things that have happened, maybe just this morning, maybe in the last couple of weeks. Maybe it's been deteriorating over the last year or two. Maybe it's something that happened 20 years ago. Maybe there's some relationships that need mending. How can we take this example of Esau and apply it to our lives? Something to think and pray about. Even as we take communion today, as we think about Christ and how he's forgiven us, we can ask God, God, help me to forgive those that have hurt me, those that have stolen my blessing away from me. If we're going to live the gospel, which is the hardest thing to do, it's easy to show it, it's easy to talk about it when it comes down to it. You just got to memorize some things and, do some things to talk about it. Showing it, we can step out of ourselves and do it, but living it, that's the hardest part. But if we can't live it, it's going to be hard to show it. It's going to be hard to speak it. So these lessons from the book of Genesis help remind us how to live it out. And one of the basic things is how we can love, respect, and forgive those around us. As we get up to sing this next song before we take the communion, we're remembered about the blood that was shed for us.